Welcome to the Authentic Christian Podcast. Today, we're going to talk about what if you could go back in time in a time machine and talk to your high school self? What would you tell yourself? All right, so welcome back to the Authentic Christian Podcast. Today, we're going to talk about if we could hop in a time machine, which unfortunately we don't have, and we could go back in time and talk to ourselves in high school, what would we tell ourselves? How would we try to say, hey, look, this is some wisdom I've learned in life. And unfortunately, we can't do that. We can't go back in a time machine and talk to myself, but maybe we can give ourselves some advice hypothetically, and maybe somebody watching who is in high school or someone who's younger can take that and apply it to their life. So, Tucker, what would you tell yourself if you could go back in time?
Man, I got 3 points, but what I would share with the shorter, higher metabolism, younger 17-year-old Tucker, man, like I've thought about this so many times. I remember being 17 and I presently knew that I was 17. I don't know. I just time was a big thing back then for me to realize how young I was. Now I'm 25. We're still young, but there's 3 points.
I'm 10 years older than you are.
You're still young. Yeah. We're all still young. There's 3 things I want to just talk about throughout the podcast, but I guess 3 of them would be you're living on borrowed time, Tucker. Trust that God has your best in mind, and then my biggest mistake. And those are some things I want to share throughout this whole thing.
All right. Well, let's talk about living on borrowed time.
Yeah.
When you're young sometimes, and I go, it's all relative, because to somebody that's older than us, they're going to say, well, you guys are still young. But if you're in high school, you're not going to think, I'm 35. I remember, and I'll tell you why I know that. When I was in high school, I played baseball, and I was on the baseball team. We had an assistant coach who if you ever watches this, is Mark. And Mark was awesome. He's a cool guy, but he's like 27. And I remember thinking, man, he's so old. When I was 18, I'm like, this guy's so old. He's our assistant coach, but he's a great guy. Yeah. And now I'm older than he is. So I know when I talk to a high school kid, we even had this story. I'll tell you this at South Haven, where we go to church together. One of these young guys came up to me when I first started going to church there, and he's like, hey man, I've been there 6 months. He's like, hey, why don't we hang out more? And he's like 18 or 19. I was like, how old do you think I am? And he's like, I don't know, early 20s. I was like, I'm 34. And he was like, oh, cool. And of course, then he didn't ask me to hang out anymore.
That's still young.
Yeah. So not to him. But so we're living on borrowed time. What are some things you would just give your high school some specific topical, hey, when you were in high school, maybe this is stuff you should shy away from, or things you've learned in life. What do you think, Scott?
Oh, if I was going to tell myself something in high school, I'd say learn your value, put that in proper perspective.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And we can take that in many different directions. Number one, know your value. There's a lot of things that go on today in school. It was going on back then. And from what I hear and what I gather, it's getting worse. But there's a lot of bullying. There's a lot of depression, a lot of sadness, a lot of people doubting their self-worth.
Yeah.
Teenage suicide has risen. So you need to understand your value. And we're coming from this from a Christian perspective. So we're talking about your value as a soul. Yeah. As someone that God saw fit to create. Yeah. That desires for you to be with him. And having that in mind in itself, just that simple fact that God wants you, God made you, God desires you to be with him in the end, that'll help you to put yourself in the proper perspective when you're dealing with those outside forces telling you you're not valuable. Yeah. You don't mean much. Yeah. And nobody really likes you. Those things just simply aren't true. And those things that happen in high school, I dealt with them. A lot of people have. Yeah. That goes away as you grow older. Yeah. So, tell myself something. Hey, learn your value, understand it, put it in perspective, and remember that in 10 years, it's just not going to be anything close to this anymore. I remember by the time I graduated high school, I guess you would say by all intents and purposes, I was more of a popular kid. But in elementary and middle school, I really wasn't. And I dealt with bullying. I'm not going to say I went through anything like some people go through, but my dad always taught me you can tell somebody's character by the way they treat somebody who can do nothing for them, right? And so he would basically say to me, Aaron, the people in your school who maybe they're the most popular kids and they treat other popular kids well, but the person that's less popular, they treat them badly. That tells me the kind of character they have. Yeah. And that's really a biblical principle. If I think back to, in Acts chapter 10 and verse 34, Peter is talking about the Gentiles and how God has brought salvation to the Gentiles. And he says, in truth, I perceive that God shows no partiality. That word in Greek means God's not a face looker, which is kind of weird. You're like, no partiality. It means the way sometimes we look at somebody, maybe in our culture, we look at somebody and oh, that's a good looking person. I'm going to be nice to them.
It literally says God's not a face looker. God doesn't look at the outward appearance.
Yeah.
See that in the Old Testament. He looks at the inward appearance, right? So I would say to my high school self, who cares if you're nice to the popular people? That says nothing about your character. Everybody's going to be nice to the popular people because they want the popular people to like them, right? I would say to my high school self, make sure that you treat the people who are kind of on the fringes, maybe the people that sit by themselves at lunch. Go sit with that person. Go talk to them. Because in all my experience, the more humble a person is, normally the more receptive they are to the gospel. And that would be my goal in high school, is you have such an opportunity to influence people. I mean, think about how many, I went to high school with 900 people.
Oh.
Everybody in that building knew who I was, knew who pretty much every student is. And you have so much time to influence them for good.
Yeah.
And I just regret I didn't do a better job, But
yeah. One verse I would say that I love is Ephesians 5:16. It says, redeeming the time because the days are evil.
Mm-hmm.
And if any of you are listening from the high school that I went to, I hope life has found you well, and I love you all, and that nothing but good things have come your way. But living on that borrowed time, I remember being 17, and that was around the time that a phrase came out called YOLO, like you only live once.
Yep.
And I would not live by that standard, but I would just say that you really do only have one life. And that really stuck in my head in high school. Like we're all going to die, and you don't know when, you don't know how. So like your minutes really do matter. So every moment that you wake up, and that's like not pressured to not fail, because the Bible says we're going to mess up, and that's okay. We'll just keep on pressing, walking in the light. But like, we use our time the best way we can.
Yeah. Well, when you said YOLO, I mean, that technically is true. You only live once. Now, the phrase came out from the idea of, hey, man, live it up.
Yeah. Not
and
that
I'm
way.
sitting there saying, like, no, the Christian thing is, hey, dude, you do only live once.
Yeah.
Hebrews 9:26 and 27, it's appointed once for man to die. You only live once, and then the judgment. So make sure that the life you're living, you only live once. Live it to please God.
Yeah.
I mean, perspective is key. If your only one and only goal is to go to heaven, and it doesn't really matter if doing the right thing sets you back socially or even economically. You're talking about when you get a little older, or politically, or any other kind of social sense. None of those things really matter. We need to do what's right.
Yeah.
You only live once.
Yep.
And keep that in mind. Growing old and dying isn't always the way it happens. So you got to start preparing young, right?
Yeah.
How many people do you know? I know for me,
Oh, I know a lot.
from high school,
Yep.
there's a lot of people that I knew that I grew up with. I went through school all the way up through
Yep.
in classes with them, got to know them well. Birthday parties, all that stuff. They're not here anymore. They're dead. They're gone.
Yeah.
They died from whatever accident or other thing that may have come up.
Yeah.
So you need to start preparing early. Not saying that you're
Well, I mean,
not going to die young,
I
but
can-
the possibility
never
exists.
know.
So be ready.
I can think of a really good friend of mine in high school, was 16.
Yeah.
And a four-wheeler flip over on him, and he died. I remember thinking, it was really one of my first experiences with, when I had grandparents that died. It was like they were older. I expected them to die. But I remember he was 16. I was 16 too. And I remember I would drive and sit at the top of the hill looking down his street, his house. I would watch because it didn't feel real. Like I thought I was going to watch his house and like he was going to come running out like it was some sort of secret. And so like, life is short, man. And that was when I was 16. I've had multiple people that I was classmates. I had a guy I played basketball with who's a year younger than me who passed away. And it's like, you would never think that would,
never.
it wasn't me, but it could have been. I mean, you never know what life is going to happen. So it's just, it's such a short time, that we have on this earth. That's, the Bible says, is but a vapor,
Yeah. The second point I would hit on, which does the life is but a vapor, reminds me of Ecclesiastes.
Yeah, man.
And well, before the second point, go to Ecclesiastes 12. It's like 12 through 14. I love Ecclesiastes because it's pretty much Solomon, who's been this guy who like experiences everything. So if you're in high school right now, I know the temptation is like, I want to do everything.
Yeah.
Like, I want to experience everything in life. Well, this guy did that.
Yep.
And at the very end of the day, verse 12 says, and further, my son, be admonished by these. Of making many books there is no end, and much study is wearisome to the flesh. Let us hear the conclusion of the whole matter. Fear God and keep his commandments, for this is man's all. For God will bring every work into judgment, including every secret thing, whether good or evil. So life is short, it's a vapor, but it all leads up to like the second point, that trust God that he has your best in mind.
Yeah.
It's like young Aaron, young Scott, young Tucker, like we got to, man, if you see, like if I only knew what I knew now,
Yeah.
just trusting that he's got the best in mind. Like, I don't know, we could talk about dating. Like,
Oh yeah. I mean, one thing, let's talk about dating, especially since we just talked about Solomon, right?
Yeah.
So when you think about when you're a young guy, right? We've all been young guys. Of course, my first love was basketball.
Yeah.
But when you think about young guys, you're growing up, you're dating, you see like pretty girls at school, and it's natural to want to have a spouse and a mate. That's the way God made us. And he called it good in the garden. So when you're a young man, especially in high school, and you start dating, one of the things that my dad taught me, of course, most things my dad taught me, I didn't listen to when I was younger because I thought, oh, he doesn't know what he's talking about. It's not till later I start to realize, yeah, my dad was right about pretty much everything. Why? Because he was using the Bible as his guidebook.
Yeah.
But one of the things that he taught me about dating is he said, always date somebody that you're planning to marry, and never plan on marrying somebody that won't help you get to heaven. So when you put that together, my dad was saying, look, if you date somebody, make sure that that's the type of person that's going to help get you to heaven.
That's really good.
Yeah. You can use that for Dirks.
That's my son, Dirks Granger.
Yeah.
Shout out. I always wondered who my wife was going to be. What's her name? How am I going to meet her? And then thankfully, coming out of my senior year in college, I got to meet her in a cool way. I mean, she is everything I've ever asked for.
Yeah.
You just have to trust that God absolutely has the best in mind. For me, I met her through my grandfather, who were two special people. My grandparents, Nan and Pops. Like, it reminds me of my favorite Bible verse, Ephesians 3:20. That God could do way more than we can imagine. All of a sudden, this girl's going to get introduced to you through your family this whole time, and then I end up learning the gospel through that. You know, it's cool. Like when you think back, but I guess ultimately, just keep remembering God. That He's got the absolute best.
Yeah. If you're going to approach dating, it's not for fornication. It's not for parties.
That's right.
If you're going to approach it biblically, dating is so that you can find somebody that you're going to trust with your life, with your children, with your soul, with your emotions, with your weaknesses, with your family. You're talking about somebody, especially the children. Look, I mean, the rest of it, that really centers around you.
Yeah.
And when you're grown and you're an adult, you can do certain things to protect yourself if something goes wrong in that relationship to some degree, right? But you're talking about your children.
Yeah.
You need to make sure that who you marry, which usually leads to children, that person's going to do right by them. You don't want to be in a bad marriage that they leave you and then they drag the kids off to somewhere else, and now all of a sudden your kids are going to grow up ungodly and are influenced in negative ways, sinful ways by whoever they go off with. So dating is important that you do it the right way, with the right goal, with the right people. You need to enjoy it to some degree. Yeah, you need to have
the right
good
way.
Date. Yeah, exactly.
The right way. Yeah.
Right. And what I mean by that is this: you need to be able to get along with that person, have a good time in terms of having fun, and living life together. Those are going to be important things for a successful marriage as well. But the goal has to be put yourself with a godly person, with somebody that's going to help you on your way towards heaven, and they're going to help protect those things that we mentioned, and not be a detriment to them.
Well, and you talked about raising your kids. Like, to someone in high school, you're thinking, kids, man, I am a kid. It's going to be a long time. But when you think about dating, which you should date a person that you're thinking about marrying, right? I like that idea, courting. They're like, well, that's old. I mean, that's really the idea. The idea of you're looking at a spouse, that someone could become a spouse, and you're going to have kids, and you need to say, okay, what if I were to die in a car wreck? I know that my wife, because we've had this discussion, if I were to die, that my wife is going to raise our kids with God, number one, right? And she knows that if she were to die, that I would raise them that way. If you marry somebody that you're not on the same page with spiritually, that's scary to think you're going to bring a little soul into this world. Like, we have a little daughter. She's 4 months old, Evelyn. And she's so sweet and innocent. I cannot imagine having to worry about somebody not teaching her about the Bible.
Yeah, and I mean, listen, guys, you think about it, it's not that far off.
No,
we're speaking to people that we would suppose are in high school. It's not that far off, these things from you.
It's really not.
It's really close. Look, I'm 32. That sounds pretty old for a 17 or 18-year-old, right? Yeah. But I had my daughter when I was 28. That's just 10 years forward. My wife is 4.5 years younger than me. She's 24. Yeah. So if you're getting out of high school, you very well could be raising children in 4 to 6 years.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, really, put that in perspective. Think about that. What you're doing now, right now in 11th grade, 12th grade, is going to directly affect the future of your children that you may have in the next 5 or 6 years.
Sure.
Yeah.
So it's important. Get it. You got to get it right.
And just to summarize, 1 Corinthians 6:18, flee sexual immorality. I mean, that's
absolutely.
That's it. It's so funny. There are so many sins in the Bible that sort of gives this idea that you can stand and fight against. Sexual immorality, it's like run.
Yeah, run away.
Run from it. And you want to look at a perfect example of that. You've got Joseph in the Old Testament. young, good-looking guy apparently, and Potiphar's wife daily, just over and over, and he runs, you know. And I think the coolest thing about that account is he talks about how he couldn't sin against Potiphar, but who is really the ultimate? He says, how could I commit this sin against who? God. Yeah. He says, I can't commit this sin against God. Yeah. You read your Old Testament. The Old Testament is full of great stories. Let's think about Solomon, right? Ecclesiastes, the wisest man ever.
The wisest man.
And what's his one biggest problem?
Women.
I mean, women.
Yeah.
They get him in so much trouble. I mean, if you got your Bible, we're not going to read it now, but just go read 1 Kings chapter 11. God literally talks about how foreign women, all these wives, drove him away. He built high places for them to worship their gods. And then look at his dad, David. The Bible I forget where it is, even says David basically pleased the Lord in all things except for the matter of Uriah and Bathsheba, where what got David in trouble? He was on a rooftop looking at a woman he shouldn't be looking at a time when he should have been out with the rest of his army at battle. And it leads him into sexual sin, you know?
Yeah. I mean, look, somebody might say, well, meat's for the belly and the belly for meats. In other words, it's natural for me to feel this way, to want these things. Well, it is in a certain context. God has given you regulations on how that's to be used. And there are natural feelings and emotions. That's probably what makes this particularly dangerous.
Yeah.
Is that there is something to this that's built into you, but you need to do it the right way.
Yeah. 1 Corinthians 7:2, nevertheless, because of sexual immorality, that's the Greek word's porneia, means fornication, let each man have his own wife.
Yeah.
Basically, like, look, if you're going to burn with passion, get married, you know?
We're not saying it's not easy. We're not saying it's not easy because, like, it's hard. Like,
we're not saying it is easy.
Yeah, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, it's hard.
Facing temptation.
Yeah.
It's really hard. And there's sometimes you'll mess up. You're like, man, why did I do that? But just focus again, like the younger version of talking back to ourselves in high school, like keep that goal in mind. Like if you're in high school right now, just focus on, man, my godly wife one day, my godly husband one day, and just hold on to that. Like the temptations that come your way, just push it aside, run as fast as you can. Because the gift of marriage is awesome.
Yeah. One other passage, Hebrews 11:24 and 25 that I like to talk about when we talk about sexual immorality, right? Anybody that tries to tell you sin is not pleasing hadn't read their Bible. Mm-hmm. I've heard people say, hey man, sin is not fun. It's like, the Bible says it's fun. Listen to this, Hebrews 11:24. By faith, Moses, when he became of age, refused to be called the son of Pharaoh's daughter. Verse 25, choosing rather to suffer affliction with the people of God than to enjoy the passing pleasures of sin. For a season, I think is what maybe the ASV says. It literally says sin is pleasurable, but Moses chose, nope, I know that's pleasurable, but it's not worth it. I'm going to forego it. Now, I haven't been perfect at that in my life, but I still know that that's what the Bible says is the right thing to do. If I couldn't preach against something, a command I'd broken, I couldn't really talk about much. So when you think about dating, remember this, flee sexual immorality. Yep. Passing pleasures of sin are not worth it, and save that relationship for the person that you marry. That's the right place for it. So, okay, so that's enough about dating. We got 9 minutes left. Let's talk about drugs and alcohol. Mm-hmm. Basically, obviously, stay away from them, right? I mean, they're not going to bring you any.
You're definitely going to face it. I mean,
of course you are.
I've got stories like my friends in high school. We were a collection of different kind of people, different kind of backgrounds, football player to, bookworm to just different kinds. We all hung out together. But I remember hearing stories like, man, like one of the guys, he went to a party. He ran and jumped a fence to hide from the cops just to get there. Mm-hmm. And then he got drunk and he said it was awful. I don't know why. He's like, I don't know why I did that. Yeah. But,
peer pressure.
Yeah.
That's why most people do it.
Yeah. It's going to ruin you over time if you start down that path. I mean, it will. I can say that. I know something about it. I got involved in some of that when I was younger, and I did it for, about 10 years or so. Mm-hmm. That culture, if you want to call it that. I won't go into too much detail here on the podcast.
Sure, I understand that.
Yeah, the thing you need to know is that usually, for most people, it's a slow degenerative process. You're not going to go to the party and do that drug that one time and be like, sometimes you do immediately die.
Drugs,
but a lot of people, they don't immediately go to the point where, it's the scraggly guy on the street begging for money. They get needle marks in their arms. It doesn't happen that quickly usually. Yeah. Sometimes it does.
Yeah.
But it's just slow and over time. And the more and more you do it, the more and more you'll want to do.
Did you do a GBN Live on addiction with Bruce Hatcher?
Yeah, I did. You could go and watch
It's a great episode.
There's a program on GBN where we work called GBN Live. And on Thursday nights, we do live, we pick a topic. And so one of the episodes that I'd recommend you go look up to just think about drugs and addiction, if you struggle with it or if you just want to learn more about it, to prepare so you don't fall into it, is, was it just called Addiction? What was it?
Overcoming Addiction.
Overcoming Addiction, GBN Live, Overcoming Addiction. If you can't find it on YouTube or anything, you can send us a link and we can send us an email and we can send you a link to it. But yeah, I mean, they do ruin you over. I mean, you know, I was raised as a Christian, but I fell away. It means that terminology means I was unfaithful. I was not living as a Christian. In college, I played baseball. Guys I enjoyed spending time with, but some of them weren't the greatest influences. Not all of them. I don't want to paint it. If someone's watching, they say, well, I wasn't a bad influence on him. But, you know, we all run into that stuff. And then when I got out of college, you know, ultimately the thing about it, though, that's so great is that if we are willing to repent of any sin or lifestyle, God will forgive us. I mean, you look at the Apostle Paul. Now, he was, in a sense, a religious person, but he was persecuting the church, even to the point of casting his vote to put people to death. I think it's Acts 26:10. And yet, when he repented and was baptized, God forgave him. And 1 Timothy 1, I think verses 14 through 16 says he was basically an example of God's patience and long-suffering for anyone that came after. It was a pattern for those who would believe in Christ. So obviously believe in the New Testament sometimes encompasses, you know, more things like believing, repenting, confessing, and being baptized. So, but you look at that pattern, there are some bad people in the Bible that became Christians and God forgave them.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. So any lifestyle that you're living in, if you're willing to come out of it and follow the Bible, you can be forgiven. I mean, 1 Corinthians 6, 9 through 11 gives a whole list of bad lifestyle people. Some of those sins I've been guilty of.
God forgave David.
That's right.
He
God
killed a man
David.
and stole his wife, and he still forgave him. There were some consequences, some serious ones that even lasted here on the earth, but he forgave him.
That's right.
I mean, if you're struggling with some of that, you know, it's okay to just stop. And I mean, like, that's the greatest thing you said is there's hope in forgiveness in Christ. So.
Hey guys, thanks for listening to the show today. We'd like to mention you can download these episodes. They are sponsored by the Gospel Broadcasting Network. We have an app available. You can check that out on Apple or Android devices, and you can stream and listen in to the show and get answers to life's biggest questions.
Pure speech. I'll say this. I remember the first cuss word I ever said, and I'm ashamed of it, was peer pressure. I was in photography class in 10th grade. I'd never said a cuss word. And one of the most popular kids in my grade was sitting there with a group of 2 or 3 girls and him, and he was saying, just say it, say a cuss word. And I was like, no, man, I'm not going to say that. And of course, I wasn't that popular then. I wanted to be accepted. And so I gave into peer pressure and said a cuss word, right?
Yeah.
I wish I'd have never done that, right? But that was something that pure speech, I gave into peer pressure. And honestly, I don't really think at that time I knew what the Bible talked about it much, you know? How important is pure speech to a Christian? What does the Bible say about pure speech?
I suppose that ties over to your reputation and your influence a lot.
Yeah.
You know, it's not simply refusing to use cuss words.
That's
or, refusing to slander, refusing to gossip, refusing to speak ill of others. But, you know, talk about the speech goes into blessing those that persecute you as well. It can be a spoken thing that you do. Somebody wants to talk bad about you and want to beat you down verbally. Well, you can use your speech to bless those that persecute you, as Jesus taught. You can use it to speak well of others, mention the good that others do. Of course, we need to recognize the need to speak the truth as well, which this goes into having pure speech that's seasoned right. Not necessarily always just saying something that's factually accurate doesn't necessarily make it pure speech, but you got to recognize what your intent is in stating that thing as well.
Well, and it says something too. I mean, out of the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaks. You know, whenever you say certain things, what it really is a window into your heart.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a lot of things Jesus talked about, a window into your heart. I mean, we're talking about lust, right? Jesus said in Matthew 5, 27, 28 maybe, I forget where it is. I think it's where it is. But if you look at a woman to lust after her in your heart, you've committed adultery with her already in your heart. Look at a woman to lust after her. Literally, you didn't commit fornication. You didn't commit adultery with her. But what he's saying is, if you start that stuff in your heart, that's going to lead to it in your life.
Yeah, your speech is like the fastest growing fruit, if you will, of your heart. That's the way that people say, well, you can't know somebody's heart. Well, to some degree, that's true. And to another, that's not true. And in this way, You really can get to know somebody's heart by looking at their fruits and looking at what they say, because that's where it's coming from. It's coming out of their heart. You can look at what they say and what they do, and you can know some of those things. So your speech needs to be pure so you can give off that good fruit.
If anyone, this is James 1:26, if anyone among you thinks he is religious and does not bridle his tongue, but deceives his own heart, this one's religion is useless. So, little pet peeve of mine, Christianity is a religion.
Yes,
all right?
it is.
People say, give me Jesus, not religion. Literally, you can't have one without the other. Yeah. Christianity is a pure religion. The next verse, pure and undefiled religion before God, pure and undefiled Christianity. Okay, so back to the point though. Basically, we have to learn to bridle our tongues. I'll tell you that's hard.
It's very hard.
For me, you know what it meant? I had to give up video games. Because the one thing that used to get me fired up like nothing else was playing video games and losing. And so
were you the guy that got mad and threw the controller?
Man, I don't know how many controllers I probably threw in my lifetime, but I probably threw them on the couch. I was smart enough not to want to break them. But I'm telling you, like, there are certain things, and that's if something bothers you like that, you got to cut it off. You know, if your hand caused you to sin, cut it off. Right? Video games tempted me to use foul language. I cut them off.
Yeah.
Now I just play golf on my phone, and it doesn't make me angry.
Yeah,
because I'm pretty good at it.
You never know how heavy your words are to someone. Like, especially in high school, like there are different groups of people, popular, unpopular. All are seen as the same in the eyes of God. We're all the same, but you never know. You could be the guy that changes the guy that might not be cool his whole life by being his friend. You could literally change his life.
My dad was in law school. He played baseball at West Virginia University. He went to law school. And he had a guy that asked my dad in law school, hey, Rick, would you like to have a Bible study? He taught my dad. My dad obeyed the gospel, became a Christian, and became an elder in the church, had me, and now I'm here. Like, I think, what if, I think it's Mike Sweeney, maybe that's it. What if Mike Sweeney, I think he's a judge like in West Virginia now.
Cool.
What if he had never asked my dad to have a Bible study?
Yeah.
I mean, I'm sure the Lord would have providentially, I don't know how it all works, but the fact that he did that to my dad and then my whole family are Christians, and now I'm getting to work at GBN and try to spread the gospel to people. I mean, that's probably stuff like that's what I'd tell my high school self. You never know the impact you may have on somebody. So we're trying to redeem the time. Maybe some people from our high schools will see this and they might even say, you know what, that guy's a hypocrite. I knew him from high school. And we'd say, you know what, you're probably right. There are a lot of people in my life where if you knew me in the past, I was not the good Christian example. And now all we can do is try to redeem the time. And so for anyone watching, if you see us and you think, man, those guys, I know those guys.
Man, we messed up a lot.
God forgave me.
I changed.
That's right. I changed, and you can change too.
That's right.
And so we got about 20 seconds left. You guys got any quick last-minute thoughts? I love throwing this at you.
Oh, man. So I'll see. Number 3, my biggest mistake is not reading my Bible.
Yeah.
I love Jesus, but I really didn't read my Bible.
Me neither, man.
Just do that, younger self.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd say it's never wrong to do right, and it's never right to do wrong.
That's right. Doing the right thing is always the right thing, even if it's hard.
That's right.
Thank you guys for tuning into this episode of The Authentic Christian. We'll see you next time.
Hey guys, thanks for listening to the Authentic Christian Podcast. This podcast has been sponsored by GBN, Gospel Broadcasting Network. You could download the app and start streaming every show, watch every episode, and discover the answers to life's biggest questions today.